I deal with a lot of executive men that gave up family for money. They look back 100% of the time, say,
it was a mistake.
I wish I had gone to my kids' football game, cheerleading, gymnastics, because all this bullshit that I've acquired, I lost everything.
There's nothing that will replace the permanence of the relationships that you have in your family. No material item will come close to that. So thank you, Thom, for being on my show with me, on my social media with me. It's my show. It's a little bit of a change for us because I'm used to being on Thom's podcast or a guest on the things that he's putting out into his social media space. So thank you for being with me. And I think it's important to have conversations about relationships. It's something that people really struggle with. And in the work that I do with women, relationships are at the core of everything that they find to be a challenge in their lives. So one of my early role models in the kind of woman that I wanted to be, and this was when I was in my 20s, is someone that I don't know if a lot of our audience may or may not be familiar with her. Her name was Dr. Laura. And even then, some 30 years ago, it was very controversial, the things that she would discuss. Like one of her books was called something like Care and Proper Feeding of a Husband. And the nature of the book was to teach the readers, the women who are reading the book, how to be a good wife. It seems to be a lost art these days, and women in society are looking to men to improve and be better. And I'm not suggesting that all of us don't have some sort of work to do on our own personal development, but it seems an awful lot to me like women are given a pass in working on who they are in a relationship with a man, and men are just trying to figure out where in the world women's heads are going. All of that to say, this quote of Dr. Laura's that I love and hold dear has a lot of implications even today. And it says, without obligations to other people, life has no purpose.
The struggle is real. I think it's been the existential struggle for human beings since Adam and Eve. How do we get along with each other, even if it's just the two of us? And I'm not conflating a billion years of human development into trying to understand it in a 5-second conversation. Women, kids, boys, girls, men struggle with who they are. Right now in our silly society, we're having people dictate too early the answer to the question of who people are.
Who am I?
Like the existential thing, who am I? It's a struggle for every human being. You can't get it answered before you go through puberty. You can't. And we're telling little kids, women, mothers of kids to let them determine who they are before they go through puberty. Can you imagine? It's crazy. Then how do women get along with men? There's an old quote, know yourself and seek self-improvement. It's an old military quote from the 1820s. What if we just looked at answering that question first? Know yourself and seek self-improvement. Whether you're a woman, whether you're a child, whether you're a man, whether you're even married, you've got to figure out you first.
Yeah. Nobody's going to there.
They're telling people, if you have an issue, that must be you can't do X, so you should be Y.
Right.
Or YY or XY. You know?
Yeah.
The other part of that longer saying, know yourself, seek self-improvement, and be proficient at the position that you're in. If you decide to be single, be proficient single.
Mm-hmm.
If you decide to be a mom, be proficient at being a mom, but you have to do the first one first. Know yourself and seek self-improvement, and then be proficient. Those conversations, age-honored since the beginning of humankind, aren't even talked about today. If I feel in distress,
yeah, it's got to be some outside force
out.
Who is responsible for the way you feel, your happiness, your lack of happiness, and everything seems to be centered around what's going to make people happy right here, right now. And so this Dr. Laura quote about obligations to other people, you know, we look at society today and you can see it's everywhere that people want as few obligations as possible And
somebody gave that a negative stigma. You know what I mean?
People want as few obligations as possible and as much immediate gratification as possible. And both of those things were supposed to make people happy. But what you're seeing is elevated numbers of depression. There's a whole lot of talk about suicide and suicidal ideation going on in our society and disturbingly among our youth. So it's very confusing because our society and everything that's great in American culture starts and ends at the family, a man and a woman and children. And there's been this rush, this move to somehow marginalize it, take it away, change it, remove the father, all of these single moms who aren't doing the best thing by their children by saying, my happiness is so much more important than keeping my family together. It just doesn't feel good for me, so I'm going to bolt.
The capstoning, be your best self. Let's be technically and tactically proficient. Honor yourself. Be good at what you do. If that's the bedrock, then try to be in a relationship or on a team. Until you're obligated to the results, the outcome, you're obligated to, in a marriage, to the other person's life.
Yes, so it's interesting. Why has this word obligation taken on such a negative connotation?
Salespeople. Not that I'm negating. Somebody has sold they've sold a society that obligation
doesn't feel good. It doesn't make you happy. It's weighing you down somehow. And the opposite is true.
Well, the studies that are being done right now, and you can actually track them on social media. A lot of people are analyzing how genetics get released under strain and pressure. Come to find out, you say you have the capacity as a single mom or a single woman to do something, to make money, to be healthy. As a single human being, they have determined you don't get released your genetic potential till you add something to the equation that stresses out your genes that were carried on from parent to kid, that under obligation, you become a better human being.
You absolutely do. I mean, in its purest sense, as a retired Navy SEAL, your obligation to your teammates, I'm sure, elevated your performance and vice versa. You can't let people down to whom you're committed, so you expect more of yourself, and you expect more of them as well, which is also good for them. I mean, this sense of make sure everybody is comfortable at the cost of all performance and commitment is garbage.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Totally destroying our society.
But it's easier to sell somebody on emotions
or pleasure or ease.
And don't work so hard at this. It's probably not the right thing for you.
Or you deserve horrible words.
In the teams, it just becomes very clear that you can't do something hard alone.
Right.
So if we're going to tackle something impossible for one person to do, you have to create a new context in which you count and the other person counts equally as much.
Yeah. So I spent a number of years of my life in the professional arena. I was in the investment business, which I absolutely loved, and I felt a strong sense of obligation to my clients and to the people who were on the team of professionals I was working with. That made me better at my job. I wasn't sure how to make a transition from having a sense of obligation in a professional setting to a family setting, but nothing in my entire life has given me such joy and reward as being a mother and being a wife. And knowing that what I'm doing with my time and my efforts and my days, it impacts people's present and future in ways that if I wasn't there and my kids were in daycare, would not have the same outcome. And I know there are people who choose that. It's an absolute choice. There are all kinds of outcomes. Not all of them are negative. But for me, I was not going to have children to let someone else raise them. And society, in certain ways, there's this hashtag trad wife trending on Twitter, where a group of mobsters sort of coming after women like me, and bring it, please. I'll go toe-to-toe with those people every day about the kind of life that I have led and what they've contributed to our society.
I like to, Stacy and I like to look at different ways to look at the same conversation. If you were an investor and you wanted to invest in something that had the highest outcome, predictable outcome for family, here's what you would invest in. The woman, after pregnancy, raising her kids for 3 years. That would be the most predictable outcome investment to family that any investor could ever invest in. It guarantees family structure if for 3 years the woman commits to getting the kids off the ground. The kid, twins, whatever you're going to put on the table. And very few women do that. The ones that do, their family is literally bedrock sound for the rest of their life. Mm-hmm. You know why it's difficult to invest in that? Because it's fucking hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's an unknown space. There doesn't seem to be a reward. It's a struggle. It's easier to be an individual chasing your individual desires. It's much happier to do it by yourself and let somebody else, for that 3-year period of time, take the strain off of you.
Well, I remember when Chance was a baby and the choice was sort of made for me. I got laid off the day after our son was born while I was still in the hospital. And, at times I said, there's no way I would have not gone back to work because I had a sense of obligation to our family's finances. But having said that, being a mom of a newborn, there was no way I could leave him. There was just no way I was going to walk away from him and let somebody else have those moments with him that I could never recapture. It just wasn't going to happen. I was reading a blog during that time, and it was funny and telling. It was a woman who had a newborn also, and she could not wait to get back to work. And she was like, I've given up the days of stinky diapers, puke, and formula everywhere for my corner office and Starbucks and some quiet. I get it. I completely understand that. Any of us can understand that. But I wasn't willing to give up his first moments for my comfort.
I deal with a lot of executive men that gave up family for money. They look back once they get to the point where they have $20 million in retirement. They look back and 100% of the time say,
it was a mistake.
I wish I had gone to my kid's football game, cheerleading, gymnastics, because all this bullshit that I've acquired, I lost everything to have something. Now I have nothing at the end.
Mm-hmm. Things are not the most important
What
things.
if you let the struggle take a financial loss up front for a massive, huge outcome at the end?
And when it comes to finances and the things that you're going to pursue, how much is enough and at what cost? And these are things that I don't think people are clear on. I don't think people are clear on those with every decision that they're making. I mean, at least based on what we're seeing in popular culture, there's a lot of very short-term choices that are made that make people feel good or some sort of rush in the immediate future, but they condemn them to more difficult things in the months and years to come. And I'm not speaking from a judgmental standpoint of like a pious conversation. I'm talking about if you overextend yourself financially and you come against hard times, you're going to hit a wall and have to make some really hard choices. The same thing exists in friendships and in intimate relationships, where if you make a choice that you know in the back of your mind something tells you this isn't going to go well, you're going to pay the price now or later.
Yeah, honey, going back to that obligation thing, and I'd mentioned literally if you want to do it right, if you couples, newlywed, you're having the next child, whatever that dynamic is, if you want to do it right under the theme of obligation, where if you strain to support another human being, woman stays home, raises kids for 3 years.
I say longer than 3 years. They're still toddlers. They can't even talk to you. So if they're being mistreated somewhere, they can't really freaking tell you.
Or what's the age for preschool? Isn't it 4 or 5?
5.
Okay,
yeah.
Until somebody else can absorb that. So say it's 5. What obligation does a man have? Here's the obligation the man has. You have 2, and it's a strain. Financially support your family. Take care of yourself. So you have 3. You have to take care of yourself. Make money for the family. But when you get home, this is the strain that men come under. When they get home, the wife's not supposed to take care of you. you're supposed to take care of them for 5 fucking years. 5. You may not get your needs met, but they probably will get met if you're taking care of the woman.
Well, if a woman feels cared for and loved, she's going to be far more likely to reciprocate that love and affection.
Since that never happens, that's where that weird dynamic happens. The woman's not taking care of themselves, not taking care of family. The man comes home, thinks that he needs a beer on the couch and to have his feet rubbed. So none of those beautiful dynamics that are obligated and strained and are for the betterment of the family they don't hit the wall, so to speak. Woman obligated to building the foundation of the family, the kids, raising the kids. Man obligated 100% to taking care of the wife so that she's protected. It's not that it's a feminine male thing. Somebody's got to do those two.
Yeah, we're hardwired to nurture and care. Men are hardwired to provide and to protect. And the more that we resist these actual genetic conditions, the harder things are going to be. Get over it.
Totally true.
Women are not meant to compete physically with men. Stop. Drives me crazy. Get
the most out of what you were given. Don't fight what you were given and think that you can alter it to compete in a space it wasn't designed for.
Yeah.
So imagine if that's your challenge, if you're watching this, that's your challenge. Do that 5-year commitment to your family. Males commit to supporting the female at home who's raising the kids for 5 years. I hope it sucks to do that. I hope it hurts to do that. I hope that happiness that you've been searching for by yourself doesn't even come up for 5 years. Work through strain, because we all know the harder you strain and you solve it, you've worked through strain, you now have a family that's got their feet under them. You now have a wife who's endeared to you, and you are endeared to her. And then year 6, watch how much money you'll make, great relationships you'll have, all those things that you suffered not having while getting your family underneath you will all come back. If you don't, you're not going to get it for 18 years.
It's true. I mean? It's very true. One of the other things I was thinking is our society, where there has been stability, has been completely about the family. And the more our society drifts away from families, looking out for family instead of self, the more problems that we have as a culture and as a society. And the stability that existed in families without regard to race or socioeconomic background can be tied directly to the sense of obligation that the parents felt. And they felt obligation to generations that came before them as well and helped to care for them. All of these things are what make our society great. Selflessness instead of selfishness. And there's a tremendous amount of reward to be gained from contributing to the people around you. Is it the fancy car? Is it the big house? Is it the momentary rush of a sexual encounter with somebody who's not your partner? No, but all those things are fleeting. And there's nothing that will replace the permanence of the relationships that you have in your family. No material item will come close to that. So all this to say, love each other. Be there for each other, and stop wishing that you had something other than what you have. Enjoy your family and be grateful for them, and be grateful that you're needed. It's not something to complain about. It's something to celebrate.